Assalamu alaikum everybody, welcome to our show Olive Branch.
Welcome. This month marks Black History Month, which is an annual celebration of achievements by Black Americans in a time for recognizing the central role of African Americans in U.S. history. Since 1976, every U.S. president has officially designated this month of February as Black History Month.
We will be having guests on our show today to discuss these achievements as well as roles that Black Muslims have played in U.S. history. Duane Muslims also has an important workshop coming up on February 25th, which we will also be talking about later in the show. We hope you enjoy the show. On our show today, we have Frank Masiah, President of the NAACP of the Buffalo Chapter, Zaid Islam, Vice President of the Muslim Public Affairs Council of Western New York, and Duane Maydun. He is the President of the Fillmore Business Association and Chairman of Masjid. So we want to thank you guys for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time and coming out and being a part of this discussion.
Thank you. And to begin our discussion, we're going to look at archive footage from 60 Minutes. Take a look.
Black History Month you find
ridiculous.
why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
No.
Do you want one?
No.
No, I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism?
Stop talking about it. I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man. I know you as Mike Wallace. You know me as Morgan Freeman.
Okay, so we saw this footage of Morgan Freeman talking with the interviewer. What are our thoughts about this Black History Month being commemorated, every February? Is this something that should be?
Yeah, well, I think from my perspective, you have what they call Black history, but African American history is an integral part of the history of the United States, not just African Americans, because you'll find that many people who are not African Americans have benefited from what came out of Black history. So that Black history is an integral part of American history. It's very difficult to separate Black history from American history since they're interwoven.
Right.
That Black history, and it's a part of the DNA of this country.
I agree. So would you think you would need a special month, though? Because February is commemorated.
I think all year long you need to take and integrate and to bring Black history of African Americans into the development of this country. Because just because you had slavery, the slave who was not getting paid, then what it required was that the white slave owner was making money, and the people working for that slave owner were making money, so they built their homes, they sent their children to school based on the backs of black folks who weren't getting paid. Right. And we're not getting credit for that economic development, because this country developed on the economic development of this country. They didn't have to pay anybody. But white people benefited from that.
Right.
And as black folks moved toward what we call the civil rights movement that culminated primarily in the '64 Civil Rights Act, that opened the door for women. There are women today who never would have had the positions that they had it not been for African Americans
right to vote,
fighting for that. So, and because women now have these different positions, their families are doing things that they never had before. They're able to send their children to school. They're able to buy better houses, and the white men have benefited from the results of the pressure that African Americans brought to bring equality to this country.
Zaid Islam, do you feel the same way? Do you agree that Black History Month should be commemorated as to look back at the mistakes that Americans have made, and just to grow from that and move forward?
I like to answer that in two parts. First of all, I agree with Mr. Masiah. I've seen him do some great things. One of the things that has happened in America when I was going to school, they used to talk about this thing called the melting pot. But African Americans, we never got a chance to melt into the pot. We were always told, pull up by your own initiative, your bootstraps.
Right.
We weren't given anything to pull up on. And it's strange because we invented some of the major things that makes America move today.
So what did you guys invent? Like, what
Stoplight, for instance, just to name one thing. But what I'm getting at is what Mr. Masiah is saying, that we're so interwoven in the development of the United States of America and the benefits that they received in terms of their capital, making them the first and foremost country in the world, especially during the revolutionary, the development of industrial America. Many times slaves or blacks were put into mines and not paid a fair wage. And sometimes I heard stories, my father told me that you were given 10 cents, another guy was given $1. So all these type of stories, that lets me know that America was developed off of our back and that we are entitled to the benefits that America has to give. So it annoys me when someone says that black people want too much. No, we want our fair share. We are citizens of this country. We help build this country. In fact, what gets me, many times we were here before those who say we should go back home. No, this is our home.
Absolutely.
We helped develop this place. So we have a right here.
Now, who do you guys see as the unsung heroes of the civil rights movement? That we know about Martin Luther King Jr., we know about Rosa Parks. Now, who would you like to shed light on that we?
There's so many.
So many. I
See?
would say the marchers.
Right. Civil rights movement in this country started when you had to put chains on people to bring them here. There was resistance. And the one reason why you don't hear about a lot of this is because it's told through the eyes of somebody white.
Right.
And when you have to put chains on people to bring them here, to then keep them in chains for threatening they're going to escape or turn on the so-called master, the master is going to put words that they were having a good time. They were happy in their slavery. But when it's told through different eyes, when you start listening even to things like the spirituals, that the slaves developed, wade in the water, trying to tell what they were doing was telling people how to escape. Walk in the water. God's going to trouble the water. It means if you walk in the water, your scent is going to be dissipated and the dogs coming after you. But see, when it's not told about the genius of black folks who developed developed the culture when they were not allowed to talk to each other. They brought them from different spots of Africa. They weren't allowed to talk in their language. They weren't allowed to do anything.
So
but underneath the nose of the master, they developed ways of escaping, the Underground Railroad, all of that. But when it's told through white eyes, it's told in a different way.
Now, what's the best way, would you say, to?
Well, I think what you need to do is to have people in authority now. In fact, there has been legislation put forth nationally, but it doesn't go too far, but to start looking now at the history of this country and how it has benefited from slavery and how the country is developed to the point it has because it didn't have to pay people. You've got a new book out, Slavery by Another Name.
So you're saying that textbooks today are kind of giving a not so grim view of slavery, and that these textbooks need to be rewritten to really represent.
Well, they're told through white eyes.
And then inadequate.
They're told through white eyes, and if you tell history through white eyes, through black eyes, you'd get the perspective of African Americans. It's no different than when women tell stories. They tell the story through the eyes of a woman, not through the eyes of a man.
So is there anything being done?
Oh, I don't know.
Changes?
There's an effort being made.
Now, what's being done in the Western New York region, locally?
You mean it's continual? People are continually trying to change the things that are going, I was at a function where they went through a whole myriad of African Americans who made contributions to this country, things that are not taught in the schools. One place you got to start is in the schools, because the schools don't talk about this. And when they talk about the history, where do Muslims fit in, or the Muslim community? Nobody hears about that. Where does the African Americans fit in? Where does all people fit in? The idea is to make everybody this melting pot. If it didn't matter who you are or where you came from, when you came out of that melting pot, you had to look white.
Yes.
You had to have a North European name, even though you came from a country. See, and white folks made they adapted to that. Because for a while, if you had a long European name, you had to change that name before you could function. But if you were white, you can go from Giuseppe Verdi, if you didn't like Italians, to become Joe Green. That's all. Giuseppe is Joseph and Verdi is Green. And if you're white, you could be accepted. But if you were a woman, you couldn't be. You were a woman. If you were black, you couldn't change your name. You know, I couldn't pass for Seamus O'Brien.
Now, how has Martin Luther King Jr. changed the course of history? Would you say that his speeches were very, impactful?
Yes,
and
yes.
how
As a
would
matter
you?
of fact, me and my wife, and many of you may have heard the advent of the monument in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And much of what takes up the monument is his quotes, the different quotes. Dr. Martin Luther King.
Is there a particular one that maybe you can shed light on or stands out to you?
Yeah, the one in particular talk, and I'm paraphrasing, where he talked about relating our struggle here in America, and it doesn't make a difference how long that struggle will take. I'm just paraphrasing.
Yeah,
how
of
long
course.
the struggle would take, but we would reach those heavens of success at some point. I want to go back to what Mr. Masiah was saying. He said quite a bit, and we find, I don't know how old Mr. Masiah is, but he's been speaking this for the last 40 years. Yeah. So the fact that we still have to do these conversations, it just gives you an idea how important that we need to at least talk to each other more. I mean, all races, about our history. As Morgan Freeman said, African American history is an important ingredient into American history.
Right.
Okay.
And you can deal with Martin Luther King, I have a dream. But if you talk about one of his other quotes, where he's talking about people, that it's not it's not that we should remember the voices of those who were opposing us. What we need to do is there's the silence. What made the most noise is the silence of those who said nothing. Okay? So therefore, if you deal with the silence of those who did nothing, you bring in a whole lot of white folks who didn't say anything when this was going on. They want to talk about, as was mentioned, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, I have a dream. But when you talk about them, who despite all the pressure, all the things that were going on, and there's people attacking black folks, you know who they are. What the problem is, I'm worried about the quietness, the silence of those people who call me who say they're friends of mine, but they say nothing during these times, and they know what's going on.
Well, what about Malcolm X? Can you shed some light on him, how he...
I wanted to... Malcolm, which is great, but I also want to reflect on another unsung hero. And I was studying him, Jack Johnson, who was a great heavyweight champion boxer. Now, if you read the story of Jack Johnson, you have to take into account the time he was living in. He had no organization. He was there by himself, representing himself as a man. His first thing was that he was going to be a man, and he was going to live as a man in America. Now, take into account, this man was probably one of the greatest champions we ever had. In fact, in order for him to come back to America, he had to throw a fight. That was the condition, that he had to throw a fight. So there are many, as Mr. Masiah said, that are not in the history books correct. Paul Robeson, one of the greatest black athletes there ever was. He was so fantastic. In fact, they sealed his films of when he was an athlete, a football player. He also was probably one of the greatest black baritones we ever had. But we don't hear about Paul Robeson. Only thing they want to bring up about Paul Robeson, he was a communist. You know, so things like this annoys us.
Right, of course.
Because we're a part of American history.
Right, obviously.
Yeah.
And they do not talk about the other side. World War I, when the African American troops were put in to the French troops because they were told they didn't want, and on the American, General Pershing and them, talking about if you put all them black folks into where they have contact with the Europeans, the black soldiers may come back with the idea that there was freedom over in Europe, but not freedom in their own land. When you look at all the African Americans who fought in World War II, and then you look at all the World War II films, and the only ones you see are white people. And I know all kind of black folks who fought, and I know some who died, but you don't see them. So you end up, if you're white, growing up with a tarnished image of what the contributions were of African Americans to this country because you have never seen them doing anything productive. They were the clowns, the fools, the buffoons. And when you look at the power of people spending $3.5 million for 30 seconds on the Super Bowl for a commercial, the influence that television and movies has on people, and you look at those people who had no contact with African Americans, and all they saw was Step and Fetch It and all that kind of stuff. That's how they drew their impression of black folks.
Now,
And we had black businesses going when this country, that's how the country grew, especially in black communities. That's where you had your barbershops, your restaurants, your hairdressers.
Right.
People, black folks, despite what was going on and being excluded, developed their own business.
Oh, I'd like to shift focus to Malcolm X, if you guys could shed some light on him as a Muslim and the contributions he made.
Brother Malcolm was a very, very important historical figure, particularly for us here in Buffalo, New York, because for many of us, our fathers and grandparents, for the first time we heard about the word Muslim. We heard about the word Muhammad. We heard about, for the first time, the greetings, Assalamu alaikum. Okay, this is as a result of one of the contributions that our Brother Malcolm X made. Malcolm worked hard for the Nation of Islam back in the day, as we would say. For us, it was unique for us here in Buffalo because many of us met him.
Oh, really?
Here.
Can you describe your experience? I wasn't aware that you guys had met.
For myself, my parents, my grandparents played a role in opening up their homes to Malcolm, and as a result, we would invite many people in the community. In between Lackawanna and Buffalo, he was able to come with open arms and bring the teachings of Islam, the teachings of the Elijah Muhammad back then. So for us here in particular, particularly here in Buffalo, he was a very, very much an influential figure. And
did he inspire you to make any changes or, act in certain ways?
Well, he brought the teachings of the Elijah Muhammad, and the teachings of the Elijah Muhammad was to put self-pride into both brothers and sisters, to do for ourselves, to clean us up. Those who are, using drugs and depending on others to do for them, they were able to shake off those drugs and do for themselves, create jobs for themselves. So it brought a lot of dignity to those individuals, those who took adherence to those teachings.
And that's who turned me on to the whole civil rights movement. I was a police officer at that time, and I was sent to monitor him when he was placed on Utica Street, because he was saying all these subversive things. I wrote up a glowing report that said I heard nothing wrong. And I ended up reading just about everything that I could to get a full understanding. And it was great. It opened up my eyes just listening to him that one time. There was a little place on Utica Street. That's where he spoke.
Now, how long ago was this?
Long time.
Long time.
Long time. Well, that was it. Had to be in the 60s, because a lot of this activity took place in the 60s. He was killed in the 60s. That's when the four young girls were blown up at the 16th Street Baptist School Church in Birmingham. That's when Malcolm X was killed in the 60s. Martin Luther King was killed. Those were violent times.
That's right.
And you had two groups of people, one saying, let's become part of this system, and the other is saying, wait, this system doesn't want you. Let's separate from it. And it was some very tense times.
Now, another influential Black Muslim is Siraj Wahhaj. He's modern day. I'm very well acquainted with him, as is the younger generation. And he cleaned up the streets in Brooklyn.
Yes.
There's, can you guys shed a little bit about him? Or?
Siraj came out of our community.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Oh, yes.
The Nation of Islam.
His training came from the Nation of Islam. Siraj is also my son-in-law's client. My son-in-law is his attorney.
Oh, wow.
What has happened with Siraj Wahhaj, his development took place as the Nation of Islam changed from one movement to another movement with a more moderate and more Islamic message, which came from the son of Elijah Muhammad, whose name was Warith-Din Muhammad. In fact, we used to call him Imam Warith-Din Muhammad. Siraj was greatly influenced by him. In fact, the Imam said that he could see in Siraj a new development. And so he told Siraj, you need to be free. And what he meant by that, you need to go out and venture on your own and see what you can do with your skills and your expertise. I appreciate Siraj. One of the things I've always spoke when I speak to Siraj is that he should take better care of himself. The man travels intensely. He's always on the move. He's asked to speak.
He was just here in Buffalo. I had the honor of interviewing him, and it was just
on Connecticut Street.
Right.
Yeah.
So what other contributions have Black Muslims made? If you can just talk about it for a few seconds. Which is a lot, I can understand. But
Well,
I mean, briefly.
let me jump in here. Locally, in the Western New York area, we have quite a few things happening. As Brother Duane Maydun, who's a businessman, who's helping develop the Fillmore area. Our Imam, as well as his wife. Our Imam is a coach at Buff State. We have his wife is
Lavam, Executive Director
of the Health
you
Center.
probably know, at the Community Health Center.
Right.
Great.
we have another brother who is in construction. He does demolitions. His name is Jabril Sharif.
Okay.
We're everywhere today.
And I know you guys have an event coming up.
Yes,
Which, do you want to
February
shed
the
some light about
26th.
that? Right.
As a matter of fact, speaking of individuals, Professor Jason Young, who couldn't
Right,
be
we know
here
him
today.
pretty well as well. Yep.
Yes, but he'll be giving a presentation on the 26th of February at this event. And this event is an annual one that we have.
At Masjid Numan?
It's sponsored by Masjid Numan.
Okay.
But basically, it is to highlight the contributions of African American Muslims here in America, just what we were basically alluding to. And Jason, Dr. Jason delivers a powerful presentation on some of the historical figures that came over as slaves, and they were able to maintain their belief system. They went through slavery, and then they were freed, and then lived a life here in America.
Okay. Well, it sounds like a very powerful event.
Yes, so we look forward to that. That's on Sunday, the 26th of February.
What time? Sure. We'll put a slide for our guests as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, would you like to tell us about the NAACP?
Well, I just want to tailgate on this. They talked about the genius of black folks who came to this country, and despite the pressure of them to conform, despite that, in many instances, and still, they were able to maintain the culture, their original culture. And they don't get credit for that.
Yes.
when you look at listen to what goes on in the black religious institutions and then match that up with some of the things that are going on in Africa, you hear the same musical styles
Yes.
that evolve, but those styles then became part of the American culture.
Such as jazz, right?
That jazz, etc., that then people like the Beatles and all copied.
Blues.
You know, so that
They steal the blues from us.
yeah, and that's why you end up with a distortion of the history of this country as far as the contributions of people of color.
I also want to make an observation that most folks, they see Malcolm and Martin Luther King as separate, but they agreed. There's photos where they sat and they had a long conference together, along with Elijah Muhammad. They agreed the goal was to free the African American from the tyranny. Basically, we were under tyranny and oppression. I mean, some parts of the country we couldn't vote. Dogs were being sicked on us for the right because we wanted to vote. So they agreed on the fact that we had to be free, get our freedom and become American citizens and get the entitlements that America owed us. However, they may have different directions to get there, but the ultimate goal was the freedom.
Okay, we're out of time now, so we're going to have to close that. So I just wanted to thank you
just
all
getting
for
warmed
coming
up.
on to our show and giving such great insights.
Yeah, we appreciate
Okay.
all the insight that you guys gave, and
Hope that our
Thank you.
viewers definitely learn from all the knowledge that you have shared with us today. So thank you so much for sharing.
thank you.
We have to be.
Western New York Muslims has an upcoming media production workshop, and here with us is Jerry Thras, and he's going to tell us a little bit about that.
Hi, Nicole. Hi, Fatima. Thank you for having me here at Olive Branch.
Thanks for coming.
No problem. As you know, I'm the creative director here at Sunspin Media, a brand new company that's kind of doing a media workshop. We're offering this service to anyone who wants to learn more about the aspect of videography or cinematography, if you will, or go into film-based production stuff, or just to do anything with your camera that you just bought and just make it look good. And it's going to be a 2-day workshop. The first session is going to be on February 25th, if I recall correctly, and the other one is March 3rd.
They're both Saturdays, right?
Yes, they're both on Saturdays, yes. And they both are continuous, so you have to attend session 1 and session 2. So, yeah.
And how do you get more information on that?
To find out more about that, you can go online to wnymuslims.org or to sunspinmedia.com. And there should be more information there. There's also more information on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/sunspinmedia.
And we'll also be showing a video. Well, thank you, Jerry, for coming and sharing this information with us.
Thank you for having me.